Hi friends, welcome back to another chapter of Charlotte's Web. Today we are going to read chapter 8, titled A Talk at Home. But before we begin with chapter 8, let's review what happened in chapter 7. If you recall, Wilbur received some bad news. The old sheep had told Wilbur that he was going to die when the weather became cold, that the farmers were going to come and slaughter him and then use him and eat him for Christmas dinner. That really upset Wilbur. He burst into tears. He was crying hysterically. He was screaming, "I don't want to die, I don't want to die." And at the end of the chapter, Charlotte told him to quiet down and that she promised she would save him. Now, chapter 8 is titled A Talk at Home. We inferred at the end of the chapter that maybe they were going to talk about a plan to save Wilbur. Let's see if that really happens in this chapter, or maybe we'll learn something new and we'll have to change our thinking. Chapter 8, A Talk at Home. On Sunday morning, Mr. and Mrs. Arabelle and Fern were sitting at the breakfast table in the kitchen. Avery had finished and was upstairs looking for his slingshot. "Did you know that Uncle Homer's goslings had hatched?" asked Fern. "How many?" asked Mr. Arabelle. "7," replied Fern. "There were 8 eggs, but 1 egg didn't hatch, and the goose told Templeton she didn't want it anymore, so he took it away." "The goose did what?" asked Mrs. Arabelle, gazing at her daughter with a weird, worried look. "Told Templeton she didn't want the egg anymore," repeated Fern. "Who is Templeton?" asked Mrs. Arabelle. "He's the rat," replied Fern. "None of us like him much." "Who's us?" asked Mr. Arabelle. "Oh, everybody in the barn cellar. Wilbur, and the sheep, and the lambs, and the goose, and the gander, and the goslings, and Charlotte, and me." "Charlotte?" said Mrs. Arabelle. "Who's Charlotte?" "She's Wilbur's best friend. She's terribly clever." "What does she look like?" asked Mrs. Arabelle. "Well," said Fern thoughtfully, "she has 8 legs. All spiders do, I guess." "Charlotte is a spider?" asked Fern's mother. Fern nodded. "A big gray one. She has a web across the top of Wilbur's doorway. She catches flies and sucks their blood. Wilbur adores her." "Does he really?" said Mrs. Arabelle, rather vaguely. She was staring at Fern with a worried expression on her face. "Oh yes, Wilbur adores her," said Fern. "Do you know what Charlotte said when the goslings hatched?" "I haven't the faintest idea," said Mr. Arabelle. "Tell us." "Well, when the first gosling stuck its little head out from underneath the goose, I was sitting on my stool in the corner and Charlotte was on her web. She made a speech. She said, 'I am sure that every one of us here in the barn cellar will be gratified to learn that after 4 weeks of unremitting effort and patience on the part of the goose, she now has something to show for it.' Don't you think that was a pleasant thing for her to say?" "Yes, I do," said Mrs. Arabelle. "And now, Fern, it's time to get ready for Sunday school. And tell Avery to get ready. And this afternoon, you can tell me more about what goes on in Uncle Homer's barn. Aren't you spending quite a lot of time there? You go there almost every afternoon, don't you?" "I like it there," replied Fern. She wiped her mouth and ran upstairs. After she had left the room, Mrs. Arabelle spoke in a low voice to her husband. "I worry about Fern," she said. "Did you hear the way she rambled on about the animals, pretending that they talked?" Mr. Arabelle chuckled. "Maybe they do talk," he said. "I've sometimes wondered. At any rate, don't worry about Fern. She's just got a lively imagination. Kids think they hear all sorts of things." "Just the same, I do worry about her," replied Mrs. Arabelle. "I think I shall call Dr. Dorian about her the next time I see him." He loves Fern almost as much as we do, and I want him to know how weirdly she is acting about that pig and everything. I don't think it's normal. You know perfectly well animals don't talk. Mr. Arable grinned. Maybe our ears aren't as sharp as Fern's, he said. It's a very short chapter. So in that chapter, Fern told her mom and dad all about what happens in the barn. And she even told them that the animals talk to her. It seems really normal to Fern because she hears them talk. But the parents don't really believe her, and they're a little bit worried that she's hearing things that really aren't happening. What do you think? Do you think the animals are actually talking and that Fern can hear them? Or do you think that she's making that up in her imagination? You decide. Next time we read together, we are going to read chapter number 9, and it's called Wilbur's Boast. We're going to learn a new word, boast. We're going to learn what that means, and we're actually going to see it in action. All right, we'll see you guys later. Thanks for listening.